Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you come back for the next episode covering the points of this conversation.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_Pod.
Follow me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
Follow me, Chris Beane, at Chris Beane Official.
Join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Beane, on one of my social media platforms, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. I'm Chris Beane, and here with me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we're going to embark on a vital journey exploring the art of leadership. In every aspect of life, leadership skills are not just beneficial, but essential. Whether it's steering a business, a team, or your own personal endeavors, understanding and applying effective leadership principles can make the difference. So let's dive in.
Yes, sir. Leadership isn't just about authority. It's about influence. It's about inspiring others to achieve greatness, both individually and collectively. And, let's unravel some of the core elements of leadership and discuss practical strategies for navigating challenges and empowering your teams. I think something that I learned about leadership that has come from many different sources, but something that you and I have discussed too, is that, leadership is as we like to look at it, is influence over authority. And so rather than being, hey, you're going to listen to me because I'm in charge, you're going to listen to me because I'm going to influence you, and we have a relationship, a back and forth that we've developed with each other that's going to help us to navigate challenges and problems and get work done, not because I'm the big demanding taskmaster that's telling you to do all these things and I'm the guy in charge, so you do what I say no matter what. But we have a relationship and understanding where we can communicate back and forth, understand the importance of things. If I tell you to do something but you have a better idea, or you don't want to do it because it's a bad idea, we can sit down and talk about it, and there is that communication and that again, that relationship back and forth. And I think a lot of people think that leadership is, I've been here for 20 years, you've been here for 2 years, so you can do what I say no matter what, which in some cases can be true. And hopefully there's a reason behind that. But if it's not communicated why, then it is just kind of, someone being a tyrant and someone saying you're going to do what I say because I'm in charge, which I don't think is good leadership. And another facet of that too that we can talk about is that leadership in essence is manipulation. And when I first heard you say that, I had a little pushback on that phrase, but at the end of the day, I think that there's merit to that as well. But like I said, we can discuss that a little more too.
As you're talking about those principles of leadership there, we've done an episode, and it's been a while ago now, but we did an episode on servant leadership. And what you were just saying there reminded me of that servant leadership. And over the weekend, within the past week, I saw an image. They were talking about leadership, and it was like a pyramid of people. So you got one person at the top, there's 2 people and 3 and so on down. Well, on one of the images, the leader was at the top, and everybody is serving the leader, which means the leader is telling everybody else what to do. So the leader is at the top of the pyramid. And the other side, the servant leadership model flips that upside down, where the leadership is on the leader is on the bottom, and their arrow is pointed towards the team. So the leader is serving the team as opposed to the team serving the leader, which is an interesting perspective. And I think that goes in line with what you're saying is you want to lead because you want to be a leader who has followers because the type of person you are, not because, well, I've done this for more time than you, so you got to listen to me because I've done there and done that because now, and it's the atmosphere for that type of leadership. The relationships for that type of leadership are so much different. And I think most people, without beyond a shadow of a doubt, would say, yeah, I want a leader that is going to respect me for who I am, not because they're looking at me and said, well, this person's done this for 2 years, so they have to do this. They're not looking at me as numbers, but they're looking at me as a person. I would want, and I think most people, if not everybody, would want a leader who would also see them as a person and not just a set of numbers. And like I said, I think that what you were talking about there, that model is very close, if not exactly defined as servant leadership, which is a wonderful way to go about that. Of course, leadership is one of the fundamental aspects of leadership is self-awareness. Understanding your strengths and your areas for growth is a cornerstone of effective leadership. It allows you to leverage your strengths and seek support when learning opportunities are needed. So if you know where you stand and the things that you're capable of doing, if you understand your strengths and weaknesses, then you are going to be a better leader than otherwise. Because if you don't know where your weak areas are, then what's going to happen is you think that you're strong in those areas and you're not. And everybody else is going to be able to see, well, this isn't working so good for this guy. But if you know that those are weak areas for you, then what you can do is you can ask people for assistance or put somebody else in charge of that area. Hey, you know what? I'm not super good at this. I'm not super good at scheduling appointments, but you do such an awesome job for this. Can you help me schedule these appointments? Or, I mean, maybe that's a weird opportunity to set that up as an example, but whatever it is, knowing your strengths and weaknesses are important, and being able to ask for help in those areas to learn what you can do to help. Or if somebody is just phenomenal in that area, let them run with that. Let that be their area of expertise, and they go and do that. And then they are that person, and they're helping you and the team achieve and do better because you let that person into the role that they are kind of meant to be in and do well in and like to do. And then you let the ball roll.
Absolutely. Part of leadership is delegation. And I hesitate to use that word because a lot of people, I think, might assume or associate that with a leader delegating all the responsibility to other people and not actually doing anything. But when it's taken in the terms of what you just said, I'm not good at X, Y, or Z thing, but Mr. Beane is good at X, Y, or Z thing. So I'm going to put Mr. Beane in charge of X, Y, or Z thing because he's good at it. He's better at it than I am. And he can get a good job of it, or he can get it, do a good job at whatever that thing is. And so not only is that playing on the strengths of the team rather than relying on one person to do everything, that's also giving you, Mr. Bean, a little control over something, a little responsibility, a little ownership of this part of the job or the business or whatever it is. And I think that will do more for us as a team and as a business, on top of me trying to control everything and doing a subpar job. It's going to give you something to really work toward and have that sense of pride and ownership of, hey, I'm in charge of this thing. It's important I get this done, so that the team does well and the business thrives. Not to mention, as we already discussed, you're good at it. So you're good at this thing, and I can recognize that. Just remember back to the last time someone praised you for a job well done or recognized something that you're good at doing, and how good that felt. Imagine your boss coming to you and say, hey, I notice you're really good at doing this thing. I'm going to put you in charge of this thing so that you can run this for us in our business and help us to do a good job. I mean, it's not going to feel good to be recognized, but then also that sense of responsibility is going to propel you, I think, to continue to do a good job and really take ownership of that thing and run with it to benefit yourself and, again, the team and the business as well.
I fully agree. Yeah.
And, we mentioned it already too, but I think that along with everything that's happening, part of being that servant leader and being someone who can lead with purpose is having empathy. A great leader understands the emotions and the needs of their team members. Empathy fosters trust, connection, and a positive working environment. It's about listening and showing genuine concern for the well-being of others. And this kind of ties into, as we've already discussed, if there's something that needs to happen and someone's not comfortable doing it, then don't send them doing it. If you can find someone else, or you can do it yourself. If something is dangerous for your team to do, don't send your team out to do it. Do it yourself, or don't do it at all because it's not a good idea. But, listening to what people are saying, taking stock of how they're feeling, noticing what's going on in their day-to-day lives, and really looking out for them. Again, ties into that servant leadership and leading with a purpose, because you're not viewing them as just a means to an end. You're viewing them as an actual person, an important part of your team, someone that lives a complex life, and that's factored into everything that's happening in your business. And if you can communicate that if you can genuinely care about people and listen to what's going on and pay attention to their lives, again, it helps to foster that community, helps to foster that team mentality, and it will, uh, deepen the bonds between you and your team because, again, you're not just looking at them as a number. You're not just looking at them as a a a person to be doing this job because you need someone to fill that seat. You actually see them for who they are and care about what's going on, which is going to help strengthen their sense of camaraderie, their sense of community, and also help them to do a better job because they feel like they fit in, they feel like they're valued, and they can tell by the way that you treat them as a leader that you're actually important to them, and then you're actually meaningful in that business.
And I think that sometimes leaders try to fake that. They pretend that they put on a mask, like, I care about you, da 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 da. But at the end of the day, the people know, the team knows that that's not the truth. They it's easy for the people who are on the other side of that to tell that they're just putting on a show. He doesn't actually care. If your actions don't line up with your words, then it would be easy to see where that hole is. So you have to make sure that your actions, your words, all of it lines up and is the type of person who actually has empathy towards their team and actually cares for, not just says it, but actually does it through their actions and words. It's not just one or the other. So if you are pretending, understand that your team very likely knows that you're pretending. So don't just say it, do it, be it, live it, not just through your actions, but through your words and actions together. Okay. Now, you talked about, I think, a pivotal thing, which is communication. And leaders need to be clear, concise, and inspiring communicators. Clear, concise, and inspiring. So you want to be able to get the point across in a clear way so that everybody can understand it. And don't go overboard as you're explaining it. Don't, if not everybody on the team has to know every in and out, every nut and bolt of the process, then not everybody should need to know that. Let one part of the team know what they need to know, and the other part need to know, or tell them what they need to know so that it is clear and concise so that they know what they need to do. And then the last part of that is inspiring. You have to inspire your team to be motivated to do whatever it is that you need them to do. That's part of the I didn't say manipulation. What was the manipulation? Yeah. That's part of the manipulation that goes to this. It's not for the negative, it's for positive. So you are helping your team do the things that they maybe want to do, maybe don't want to do. So that's where that manipulation comes into play at. You are inspiring them. So your communication needs to be clear, concise, and inspiring. Whether you are conveying a vision, providing feedback, resolving conflicts, effective communication sets the tone for the entire team. Now, we've done a whole episode about effective communication. We talked about being an active listener, and there was another part of communication that I learned just recently. And now, unfortunately, once I heard this, I cannot unhear it. Now I see it happen all the time, and I do my best to not let this be myself. When you're talking to somebody, you want to be careful not to nudge them. What does that mean? Well, it would be like as if somebody was saying something and you're saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. And what that does is it seems like you're playing along and you're being part of the conversation. But for them, what it feels like you're doing is you're pushing them to get to the end so that they can have a time to talk. And so you have to be careful not to nudge the conversation. And so, yeah, 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 oh, yeah, and then, oh, wow. You can listen, you can be present, you can nod your head and do all those things, but no verbal. Because when you're doing those verbal parts, that's nudging. And it's like you're pushing them to try to finish what they're saying. Another thing that sometimes communicators do is if somebody is struggling for a word, try to do your best to just let them struggle and say the word. Tough. The reason is because it's their word. It's their conversation. It's on them. If they ask for help, then help them. But otherwise, let them do it. If that means there's a little bit of uncomfortable silence, okay, then there's a little bit of uncomfortable silence. But let them have the opportunity to say their word. Don't say it for them. So be careful not to nudge. which is a new one for me. I didn't know that before, but now I'm listening to people on podcasts. I'm listening to people talk, and the other person is nudging them, thinking, "Oh man, I have to be careful not to do that." And then the other thing is not to help them too much and say the word for them. If they ask for help, help them. Otherwise, let them say their word.
There's several things there that you just said. It's starting back with, communication and active listening, and being concise with your directions, or when you're talking. I'm sure we've all heard the phrase, simple and effective communication, which isn't always easy. I know that you and I talk a lot looking at emails and stuff, emails that we write or emails that we get. I look at an email, and if there's too many words, I tell you, I'm not reading it. There's too much. I'm sure we've all opened an email and said, "Oh my gosh, this thing's got 1,000 words in it. It's not worth my time to read." And that's where simple and concise, or simple and effective communication, can come into play, for one example. But also, like you said, when you're giving instructions to people, you don't want to overcomplicate it. And if I give you 20 steps on how to do something, you're going to remember maybe 1 through 3, if at best, if it's something brand new to you. So if you can kind of simplify it and make it more effective, or simplify it and make it efficient, so you can get your point across in as little information as possible, and still be inspiring, and still have that, that motivating aspect to what you're saying too, then that's an effective tool to have as a leader. And it's not something that's always necessarily easy. It's hard not to ramble. It's hard not to try to give as much detail as possible, when really we can try to simplify it and make it effective rather than long and rambly. And, moving on to the next thing you said, talking about active listening. I've never heard about nudging either. That's makes sense, and definitely something to look forward to trying to implement, and seeing the difference that makes in conversations. And even as you're talking about people thinking about finding words, that's something I'm not very good at. If I know the word, I'm right there trying to say what it is, and in my head I'm thinking I'm helping you, but again, I can see what you're saying, where you don't want to take that away from them. And I'm all for trying to. I'm okay with having a silence. I feel like a lot of people struggle with silence. I feel like a lot of people struggle with having a little pause, but I'm okay with that personally. And if I can let that go on for a little bit, so they can find their word, I know what that feels like, to finally remember what you were trying to say. And to your point, it doesn't mean to leave them out if they're asking for help. It's like, oh no, you can do it. Go ahead, figure it out. If they ask for help, you can help them. It's the same way that we talk about. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't listen to and take advice until they ask for it. If someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, what is your advice on this?" They're much more likely to listen to my advice and follow my advice when they come and ask for it. But when I come to you with unsolicited advice and say, "Hey, you know what? You should do this," you're less likely to actually do that thing. And that's another part of communication as well, is if someone's coming to you and they have this problem, again, unless they ask for the advice, maybe let them figure it out, because it's going to give them a chance to grow as a person of figuring out the answer to this, but also gives them the ownership of that, and say, "Hey, listen, I had this problem. Boom, I figured it out." You might know the answer already. Okay, but you as a leader want to help that person grow and become better. And so if you're always handing them the answer rather than and letting them figure it out for themselves, and letting them do the work, and letting them improve themselves by going through this journey of finding the answer, they're going to stay stuck in one place, which is not good for them. And if you're being a servant leader and leading with purpose, your purpose is to help them, and to lead them down a path that's going to make them better. And if you're doing all the work for them, they're not going to get better. And so, again, unless they're asking for help, maybe try to hold back a little bit. Of course, there are situations where you're going to need to give the help because you know the answer, and that's fine. Maybe try to explain afterward, "Hey, here's why I did this," and walk them through it. But if you have the chance to let them figure out themselves and grow and become better as a person, boom, let them do it. Let them kind of work through it and struggle through it, and ultimately become better. It's better for them. It's better for you, because now you have a more well-rounded worker, and eventually you want to stop working. Your job as a leader is to work yourself out of your position, and so let them work their way up. Let them take on that responsibility and that knowledge, and get to a place where they can take your job, so you can go on and do other things, or you can just balance your life a little bit better as that leader there. And I think those are all important things. And part of that is, like you said, don't nudge them and don't give them the word right away. Let them figure it out. I think those are new information for me as well, but things that we can all kind of implement into our day-to-day life and conversation with friends, coworkers, peers, leaders, in any kind of situation.
Yeah, and just real quick, the nudging, unfortunately, you're gonna have a strong urge to do it because you realize that you are the type person who nudges the other person in the conversation, or now that you heard that, like me, I heard that, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Now I hear people do that all the time. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it just is that I didn't know that before. It's brand new to me, and so yeah. Anyways, now you know.
No, that kind of ties into another thing I think is important for leaders, and it's the idea of continuous learning. I think leaders are always needing to be growing, acquiring these new skills, seeking fresh perspectives. And, this thirst for knowledge not only enriches the leader, but also inspires the team to invest into their own growth. If they can see you continuing to learn, constantly studying books, watching videos, going to classes, engaging in conversations with people that they can teach you things, they're going to see you doing that, and it's going to be inspiring to them, and they're going to follow your example. Something we haven't mentioned yet as a leader is that you should be leading by example. You don't say, hey, don't throw your trash on the ground, and expect all of your employees not to throw their trash on the ground. And then on your way out to the car, you throw the lollipop wrapper on the ground. They see you do that. They say, oh, he said don't throw the trash on the ground, but he's doing it himself. That's a bad example. So don't be a bad example. As much as you are communicating how and who you should be and what you should do, live it out. Walk that walk and be the example. If they don't hear anything you say, they can at least look at you and see the way you live. And that example can be set in many different ways. As of right now, like I said, we're talking about continual growth, continual learning. That's what we're doing here right now, is we're sitting down and continuing to learn and continuing to grow by having tons of conversations with people that are smarter than us, people that know things that we don't know, or even just sitting down talking together about leadership. It's going to help us grow, and we can study books, we can watch YouTube videos and lectures and classes, and just have that constant improvement in the forefront of your mind, and be taking steps to being better. Not only again, not only for yourself, but also to set that example, and so people can see you doing that, and also strive for that themselves.
Right. And of course, now in today's fast-paced society, as the leader, you need to be consistently adapting and learning, embrace change, remain flexible. And of course, that's going to help your team navigate those tough transitions, and realize that you kind of are the deciding factor on how your team views whatever change or whatever is going on. You are the lens that your team is looking at those things through. So if you come to your team and say, hey guys, I'm not so sure about this next thing that's going to happen. It might put us out of business. And, of course, that's the alarm bells are going to be going off left and right, red flags all over for your team. But if you come to your team and you are confident and clear and understanding, because the change has to happen, if you let their team see it through that lens, through that vision, it's going to be so much better than otherwise. Now, both of them might be true. You might be a little bit concerned, a little bit worried about those choices that the higher ups are making, but ultimately, that that's where the business has to go, and you have to convey that information to your team so that they can continue to do their job effectively. Then you have to not give them all of that information. You can't give them the information where you're worried and concerned, because that's the lens that they're going to be looking at that through. So as the leader, you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to change and pivot and move and grow. And part of that stems to your point that you made on being a continuous learner, learning the next things, and then sharing those things with your team so that they can continue to learn. That's part of, the leader's kind of mission. No matter where you are as a leader, your job is going to be to work yourself out of a job. So your job, you may have job description, job title. These are things you have to do those things. But really, as a leader, your mission is to empower your team to do what you do, so that you can move on to do the next thing, and then they can move on to do the next thing. You want to be working yourself out of a job continuously. Like that is the underlying, always going on information for what it means to be a leader. And if you are not continuously learning, if you're not adaptable when changes happen, and if you are allowing your emotions in as you're leading your team, then you're not going to be doing so good on that gold standard of what it means to be a leader. So be careful about that. Be careful about that. Again, be adaptable, always be learning, seeking new information so that you can better empower your team to do the same.
One of the things, the overall takeaways that I've gained from this podcast and being part of this is the idea of your perspective and the idea of mindset shifts. And so we're talking about here in these situations where something might be going wrong, when you might not be, in the best position as a business or even personally. Being a leader means internalizing that, and again, like you said, not necessarily letting that out on the floor. So that doesn't mean that you can't be concerned about it. It doesn't mean that you can't be worried about it. It doesn't mean that you can't be thinking about how you're going to solve this problem. And I think that would mean you're not human, which is something that we want to avoid. But that just means that you don't let the other people know. I think of my current boss and the conversations I've had with him as we've grown closer and I've gotten older and taken on responsibility, hearing some of the things and the ways he talks about the job, and how stressful it can be and how stressful it is. When I was younger, I had no clue. I had no idea how much was going on behind the scenes and how stressful the job could be and everything. I had no clue. He never let it slip. He never let us see. He was always positive and cheerful and invested and empathetic and communicated what was going on. It was just, you never would have known what was going on behind the scenes. And he kept that as a leader. He saw the importance of keeping that kind of behind the veil. Now I'm sure, he had friends and buddies and people he can confide in, mentors and things like that, where he could have a conversation and say, hey, here's what's going on at work. And man, it's really tough. It really sucks. But again, that was the place to do it. The place to share those fears and concerns wasn't to me as an employee who's looking up to him for guidance. It was with someone else who's on the outside who can kind of take that information and be there for them, maybe offer advice. But again, he understood the importance as a good leader. He understood the importance of withholding that from me. And it's not any kind of malicious intent. He wasn't not telling me because he wanted to lie to me, but it's not something that I needed to know. It's not something that I needed to be concerned about as an employee. And so that was a huge lesson, again, as I've grown up and grown older and taken on more responsibility and come closer in that situation to see the other perspective of that. But again, I had no clue. I think that's how it should be. You can have people to confide in, mentors to seek for advice, friends that you can complain to. But as a leader, your followers don't need to know everything. And it's kind of a difficult balance and a tough dichotomy, because as much as you want to be honest with them and maintain your relationship, you don't want to add that as part of something that could kind of bring them down. That skill of discernment of, hey, maybe I should say this, or maybe I should say this, or being able to put on that face is something that you'll have to develop. And it goes back into your constant learning and your improvement. It's something you'll have to balance. And sorry to say, you won't get it right and you'll mess up and you'll have to try again, but that's just part of the journey. And it's, again, a valuable skill to have. And sometimes we don't recognize that good leaders have that skill because they're so good at it. We don't realize they're actually keeping that stuff when it's necessary or when it's beneficial for us as employees.
I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. And I think that's probably a good place to close out for today. And today we talked about leadership is not a position or really even a title. It's really who you are and how you communicate, how you talk, how you interact with others. It's about setting an example for your team to follow. It's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those who are in your charge. Leadership is a choice, not a rank. And it's something it's a choice that we can make every day in every situation.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through the realms of leadership. Remember, leadership is not about being in the spotlight. It's about creating a spotlight for others to shine. Until next time, stay inspired, stay innovative, and keep leading with purpose.